What we're looking at here is a turning point. The BYD Sealion 7 and the Xpeng G6 don't only show just how far Chinese EVs have come, they prove that the copycat era is officially dead. Remember the Landwind X7, that blatant Range Rover Evoque ripoff? Yeah, never again. What's more, these two mid-size SUVs are the real deal. They no longer solely rely on price to get attention. The design's sharp and original. They're laden with technology and the performance markers are very impressive. What's more, they've got a flavour that's all their own and it's quite tasty. So which one is the better buy? I'm going to put them head to head on key factors like driving dynamics, cabin comfort, tech levels, and of course, battery charging times to crown a winner. So let's get into it. These Chinese Challengers are roughly the same size as the Toyota RAV4 and compete in the mid-size family SUV category, which means 5 doors, 5 seats, generous cargo space and loads of equipment. But unlike Australia's best-selling SUV, the RAV4, these are both fully electric, which means charging every 400 kilometres or so instead of heading to the servo. Both have single e-motors driving the rear wheels, which are connected to reasonably large battery packs. They're also fitted with luxurious and tech-laden interiors with similar cargo space. The BYD is slightly longer and wider than the Xpeng, but when it comes to price, they're about as close as Siamese twins. There's only a couple of $100 separating these two vehicles before on-road costs are added, and they both come with a lot of fruit. Both EVs have reasonable warranty provisions, but the BYD has longer durations in terms of time and distance accrued, although both have similar battery warranties. Another thing in the BYD's favour is that its warranty now no longer has silly caveats like only 3 years for the touchscreen, for instance. Now the whole car and everything in it is covered by a 6-year warranty. That said, if you throw another $5,000 at the Xpeng, both the battery and the car warranties are pushed out to 10 years, which is pretty good. But you've also got to factor in $5,000 is almost 10% of the purchase cost. That's big biggies. When it comes to servicing, they have the same 12-month intervals and similar prices. But the BYD comes across as a safer bet because at the moment, Xpeng servicing is done through a third party, UltraTune. The BYD Sealion 7 is finished in Cosmos Black and has a rakish, sporty design that isn't what you'd call radical or left field. It's got sleek, stylized LED headlights, an athletic side profile, and a coupe-like rear end with dual spoilers for the roof and deck lid. Full-width LED tail lights look pretty cool as well. While the BYD looks like a team of stylists work through the design, the Xpeng kind of has an AI-driven aesthetic. It's very aerodynamic with a 0.248 coefficient of drag, but the overall look is kind of generic, blobby and homogeneous. The almost full-width LED driving lights and tail lights certainly provide high-tech optics, but the overall look is somewhat bland. I'm not a huge fan of this design, but hey, what do I know? And ultimately, I want to know what you think. Leave a comment below, tell us what you think of this design. That said, the midnight black exterior paint is one of the better colours in my view, and makes it look more expensive, annoying to keep clean though. Neither car has a rear windscreen wiper, which is a bit of a shame, and they both have silly door handles. Sure, you do get used to them after a bit of time, but they're overcomplicating something that can be and should be much simpler. Both key fobs look pretty modern, and the BYD allows you to leave it in your pocket, hit the button on the door, and get in. Keyless entry, very nice. The Xpeng, by contrast, does not allow you to do that. It won't open until you actually hit the unlock button there. However, if you get the app on your smartphone, that's when you get the full proximity setup with this car, and I think that's probably a good idea, what most owners will do. Both vehicles are powered by single permanent magnet synchronous electric motors driving the rear wheels, and like a lot of EVs out there, there's not a whole lot to get excited about here. Boring! Pumping through single-speed reduction gears, they both deliver fuss-free and instantaneous acceleration with similar levels of power and torque. But unlike traditional combustion engines, there's no character or charm to how these motors go about their business. It's all very binary. Both accelerate fairly briskly from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour, although you can get high performance dual motor versions that deliver way more punch, although they're almost overkill for this sort of family SUV. Where these two start to differ is in their battery density. Both are lithium-ion batteries with ferrous phosphate or LFP chemistry, but the BYD has a larger capacity and features the brand's Blade battery design, claimed to be safer, more durable, and more efficient than its rivals. But is it really? We'll get to that later. While BYD builds its own batteries, in fact it started life as a battery maker in the mid-1990s, the Xpeng uses a CALB supplied battery, and its lower density means it doesn't have as much range as the BYD. At least that's the claim. However, the Xpeng has faster charging bandwidth. This bad boy can charge at up to 215 kilowatts at a public DC charger. The BYD only 150 kilowatts, and that's largely because this one has a more advanced electrical architecture. It's an 800 volt system versus the 400 volt system in the BYD. So in my view, having this more advanced electrical architecture is very important. It's going to future-proof this. You're going to be able to charge much faster at public DC fast chargers, and ultimately you're going to be spending less time hanging around at these public chargers. In terms of range, BYD claims to go about 50 kilometers further, and both have V2L or vehicle to load capability. That means you can plug in appliances like TVs, kettles, that sort of thing. Okay, let's start with the BYD, and everything feels a bit lush and a bit intriguing. You've got these lovely contoured sport seats. There's some really interesting flourishes on the doors here. The door handles are a little bit different, but what I really like is the fact that there's still physical controls for a lot of high use operations, like mirror adjust over here, and there's a stop start button, which again I really like. Yes, it's an EV, but I kind of want to know when it's on and off. And most of all, everything is where you expect it. Ergonomics are very good. This little central area has a bit of BMW inspiration in the chubby gear shifter, and the upmarket tactility of the buttons and drive mode toggles is rather nice. Fit and finish is really good too. The car feels solid and there's barely any bung stitching to be found. Cheap plastics are in here, but you really have to dive deep to find them. They're way down low on the doors, right down here. Most of the materials in this cabin are really nicely finished, and it does add an upmarket sense to this cabin. The 10-way power adjustable leather seats with 4-way power lumbar adjust are heated and cooled and have reasonably soft upholstery, and certainly add a bit of razzle-dazzle with the diamond stitching. Together with the sporty seat backs and proud side bolsters, it makes quite an impression when you first open the door. However, the integrated headrests mean you lose some adjustability. Storage solutions are abundant in the BYD, starting with a pretty large center box here. Now, you've got two intriguing cup holders as well. They have infinitely adjustable depth, so you push these buttons here and you can adjust them up. They will fit most cups pretty easily. They fit the 750ml bottle, not all the way down, but that's not too bad. Up here you've got a wireless phone charger, 50 watts, so it's pretty potent, and it's got a little air vent, little air conditioner, which is necessary these days. If you're running wireless Apple CarPlay and you're charging, the phone's going to get hot, real hot, so that's good. The other side is not a wireless phone charger, but you know, you can stick another phone there. There is a glove box here, plus there's a storage area under here. You can throw all your parking tickets and rubbish down there. It's got USB-A, USB-C and 12-volt sockets, and I like the fact that USB-C is really high output. I can charge my laptop with a USB-C cable, which suggests it's, yeah, very high output. And it's handy, especially when you're sitting here doing comparisons and figuring out what's going on. The last thing is the door pockets. They fit the 750ml bottle, that's fine, but the 1 litre mega gulp does not fit, not big enough. They need to be bigger. In-car tech is comprehensive, but there's a learning curve here with serious menu diving required to unlock its full potential. It's not love at first sight, but this 15.6-inch rotating central touchscreen has excellent visual acuity and reasonably good response and refresh times. There's a lot of functionality and you can adjust a huge number of vehicle systems, from drive mode settings to safety system sensitivities. But at times it feels needlessly fiddly with multiple pathways leading to the same function. That said, with time it does become more intuitive. It's the living with it factor that helps. I really like the air quality sensor menu too, which constantly monitors the air inside and outside the vehicle. And there's even ionization and air purification modes, handy for if you cut the cheese.
Sorry, I farted.
And there's a couple of shortcut menus that make life easier, and the split screen mode is useful. Plus, native GPS sat-nav is a nice touch and shows your state of charge at your destination. This helps decide when and where you need to charge up the battery. As mentioned, there are 3 physical buttons for climate control here, which is good. Plus, there's some shortcuts on the screen. Get 3 fingers, drag them this way or this way. That's your fan speed. Up and down is your temperature. And it's really handy because it's just a super quick way to adjust the temperature. And even better, when you're on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is full screen, looks fantastic. They even work on this as well, which is really impressive. I really do like that. It also comes with a really useful head-up display, something the Xpeng doesn't get, and there's a 10.25-inch digital driver's display, which is quite large and very legible, but the trip computer it's not very configurable. There's not a lot of options here. There's like basically the 2 sides you can change, and they don't give you many options. You do have average energy consumption, which is the EV version of fuel consumption. And then there's another one that's past 50 kilometers average energy consumption. I kind of wish there was just an instant energy consumption. That would be nice to just have it on that screen there. But look, overall, it does the job. The 12-speaker DIN audio stereo delivers crisp, high-fidelity audio, and when you crank up the subwoofer and pump up the bass, it gets pretty hectic, and it rarely distorts. It's a good system. The reversing camera is very, very good, with high-definition optics, multiple camera views, and a full-screen display on offer. There's semi-autonomous park assist, while the 3D mode is really impressive, and the transparent car is handy as well, especially in busy car parks. Where the BYD has a classic luxury feel, this one is far more modern in a minimalist, Scandi chic way. I mean, this white synthetic leather everywhere juxtaposed with these sort of grey woolen fabric accents is it's quite nice. I quite like it. It's far more clean. It's uncluttered, the overall layout, and it's got an ultra modern aesthetic that I reckon will probably appeal to a younger demographic, maybe a younger buyer a little bit more than the BYD. Fit and finish is very good, but not quite as elevated as the BYD. This comes across in the 6-way power adjustable seats with no lumbar, but the synthetic leather is more supple and the seats themselves are more accommodating. Despite looking like lounge chairs, they offer more lateral support, they have adjustable headrests and are heated and cooled like the BYDs. I love how the white upholstery makes the cabin look. It's a bit more futuristic and it also makes it feel a bit airy, but there's a flip side to that. As you can see here, there's some dark marks. It does mark very easily, and if you're into double denim, then these are going to have blue stains all over them. That said, this Xpeng does offer black or white upholstery as a no-cost option, so take your pick. Unlike the BYD, this central compartment has no controls. It's a bit cleaner, but I did find my elbow popping the console lid when using the touchscreen. There's a couple of other ergonomic flaws here, such as the indicator on the wrong side and the lack of manual air vent adjust. You've got to do it via the touchscreen, which is a bit fiddly at first, but you do get used to it. Like its Chinese rival, material quality is really impressive, and you have to go searching for scratchy plastics. I really like the wide, flat, squircle steering wheel. It is different. My mate Trent absolutely hates it. He does not like it. He wants the more traditional steering wheel, but for me, it's it makes every drive a little unique and it's different, and it almost feels like I'm playing Mario Kart. So it adds this sort of nostalgic element out there, and I reckon gamers are gonna absolutely love this. That said, the steering wheel controls are a bit cryptic at first and not as well labelled as in the BYD. In terms of cabin storage, this one is not as good as the BYD, primarily because there's no glove box, so you miss out on a bit of space there, but the under storage is pretty good, a little bit bigger, and it's nice and soft and fuzzy in there, so your bottles won't clang around when you throw them in. The cup holders, both spring-loaded, but they're not adjustable at the bottom and they're smaller, so I can't even get that bottle in there. You do get the 2 phone beds here, and both of them in this one are 50-watt wireless chargers, both with air cooling, which is very handy. And then we've got this area under here, which is a little bit smaller, but you do have the USB-A, the USB-C, high output, charge your laptop, and a 12-volt socket, so that's all really good. And Mercy B, the pockets fit the 1 litre Mega Gulp. The most obvious difference between the BYD and Xpeng's digital ecosystems is the responsiveness and frame rate in this G6. It's significantly faster and slicker with a much higher frame rate, and ultimately that makes it feel like a more high-tech vehicle. The menu structure isn't quite as discombobulating at first, but it still takes some getting used to. But in this case, you can blast through the menus quicker. It's very snappy. The screen itself is a little smaller at 15 inches and appears to have slightly higher definition visuals as well. There's a lot of customization available for the drive modes, more so than the BYD, but there's a similar level of adjustability to the various safety systems, and it also features internal storage and over-the-air updates like the BYD. However, the Xpeng makes it easier to customize the shortcut menu and taskbar and has a more intuitive operating system overall. It's also got an air quality sensor with purification mode, and the native GPS sat-nav is likewise very handy, complete with state of charge indicator projection at your destination. It doesn't have any physical climate controls. You've got to do it all via the screen, and there's no gesture-based settings or shortcuts like in the BYD either. In fact, there's no physical controls around this whole area. The only ones you have are up here. You've got hazards, SOS, and kill the electricity. However, the temperature controls are pretty good once you get used to them. It's nice and easy to slide the temperature, same with the fan speed. Interestingly, you can adjust the fan speed via the steering wheel and the temperature, and I love that it's called air volume. All right, moving right along, Apple CarPlay looks fantastic. Again, full screen, and if you do a little swipe from the bottom, you get the temperature controls there again, and that's really handy. It's also got a 10.25-inch digital driver's display. It's a bit narrower, a bit longer than the BYD. Looks a little bit more chic, and it also has better customizability. There's more options in here, but it doesn't have a head-up display, which is a bit disappointing. The Xpeng has an 18-speaker audio system dubbed X Opera. But more speakers doesn't always mean better sound. And even with those 6 extra satellites and more graphic equalization and a big woofer in the boot, it doesn't have the richness or clarity of the BYD's audio system. The reversing camera doesn't deliver the same high-quality image as the BYD, and when you hit reverse, it defaults to one view. But when the vehicle nears other objects, the proximity sensors detect this and several other views will pop up, and it does have a useful 3D mode. Plus, it also has a sentry mode like a Tesla, which adds peace of mind when you're parking in a sketchy area. The BYD has a more old-school luxury feel and slightly more equipment, such as the head-up display, whereas the Xpeng has a cleaner, more futuristic execution. Ultimately, neither car is significantly better than the other. It'll come down to personal preference. Both vehicles come with all the safety equipment and technology that customers expect and demand nowadays from modern SUVs, and both have 5-star ANCAP safety ratings. But the BYD pulls ahead slightly with 9 airbags versus 7 airbags for the Xpeng. So the back seat of the BYD is very impressive. I have so much legroom, and I have heaps of headroom as well, which is pretty good considering it's got a sloping rear roofline there. So yeah, I'm impressed with the amount of space here. However, it does feel a little bit claustrophobic, and that's because of the dark tones and these single piece seat backs. They're very sporty, but they kind of block you in a little bit. They don't let as much light into the cabin. I do like the fact that the seats recline a little bit. That's nice. So you can get really comfy back here. And check this out too. The armrest is like a Swiss Army knife. There's a lot going on here. Storage as well. We've got a big pocket here plus 2 little smaller pockets. Shove your phone in there. Bob's your uncle. I want to talk about material qualities back here as well. It is really nice. does have a premium feel. Tactility on the leather is lovely. Again, lots of overt stitching all around, the headlining, everything feels nice. And again, some fancy flourishes, a little bit different. Comfort levels too, quite good. You've got twin air vents, so good amenity. A little USB-A and USB-C here as well, and the USB-C is super powerful. It's got to be between 30 and 50 watts. Charges your laptop again. Jesus handles, lovely touch-operated reading lights, bag hook, and yeah, very cool place to hang out. The ISOFIX and top tether child seat anchorages are in there as well, plus there's a massive panoramic glass roof with a proper blackout sunshade. Okay, back seat of the Xpeng. Xpeng is not quite as palatial as the BYD, but there's still heaps of legroom here. This is really good, and it's indicative of a clean sheet EV platform because it doesn't have an engine up the front and a big transmission tunnel with a drive shaft. You get this nice open area, and again, because there's no engine, they can push the length of the passenger area. So it feels super spacious back here. More so than the BYD too, because of the lighter colors, and also because these seats aren't quite as big and blocky. You can see a little bit further out. I also like the fact that the under thigh cushions, they're a little bit longer. I've got more support under my legs here, which is good. Also more headroom. This vehicle is a little bit taller than the BYD, and because there's no sunshade, there's a bit more headroom there as well. But therein lies the problem. There's no sunshade, and on a stinking hot day, if this is parked out somewhere, this is going to get really hot in here. Even though these seats aren't quite as sculpted and form-fitting as in the BYD, the comfort levels are better. The synthetic leather is actually more supple, which again is strange, more supple than the actual leather. And it kind of feels like you got your own seat back here, mainly because this central armrest is a bit wider. It feels like you're gonna get a bit more personal space from the passenger next to you. And I also like the fact there's a button down here, a little lever, to make it recline a whole lot easier, and it reclines more. An interstate trip in the back of this car would be absolutely effortless. The only thing it's missing is a bit of a screen there for the ultimate experience. Storage not quite as good as the BYD. You've only got the cup holders here and a single pocket there, plus the door pockets like in the Sealion 7. And there are two USB-C ports back here, but they're not high output. Laptop does not charge with these. Unlike the front seats, you've got manually adjustable air vents here, which is cool. Plus there's a really good double LED reading light, the Jesus handles, but there's no coat hanger hooks, and the windows don't drop all the way down, which is a little bit of a shame. And also the power operated door latches. So they're really nice. You hit the button, the door opens, but in an emergency, let's say you're in a crash or something like that, and all the power is out in the car, you've got to fiddle down here, pull this thing out, and find a little grab handle in here, pull, and that latches the door like that. So best to remember exactly where that is, just in case. Pop the power operated rear tailgate and you expose a reasonably sized boot. This is pretty good. It's enough for most families. You get maybe a dozen bags of mulch in here. The load floor is quite high, which is good. It means you're not bending over and bending down to load stuff, but you've got this lip here that gets in the way a little bit. However, there is a little bit of extra room under here. There's a nice big bucket there. You could put the groceries in there, stop the fruit and veg rolling around, and then underneath that, you have a puncture repair kit, which means no spare wheel, which is like pretty much every EV out there. They just don't do spare wheels. Damn shame. Amenity is reasonable with two tie-down anchorages, a pair of excellent LED lights to illuminate the cargo area at night, a fold-out bag hook, and a small netted area for odds and sods. Split folding rear seats open up significantly more space for larger objects, such as flat pack furniture or snowboards. That said, the BYD has a modest frunk, while the Xpeng has none. The Xpeng also has a power-operated tailgate that reveals a similarly sized cargo space, but Xpeng claims this has more room than the BYD, and my measurements also confirm that. This vehicle has a bigger boot in every dimension except for length. than the BYD. But again, it does have this lip here, which kind of gets in the way of efficiently loading things in and out, especially heavy things. That said, you're going to get heaps of stuff in here, loads of mulch. It's enough for heaps of grocery shopping, family outings, you name it. And there's also some underfloor storage, not quite as much as the BYD. And again, no spare tire. That is a shame. Amenity in the boot is not great. You miss out on tie down points, you miss out on bag hooks, you miss out on little storage cubbies. So there's not a huge amount going on here. You do have the two LED lights like the BYD. There's a thumping subwoofer as well for cranking the tunes. And it does have one thing that the BYD doesn't have, and that is a 12-volt socket. This one has spring-loaded back seats that fold down easily to open up more length for surfboards and the like. Thus far, there's not a lot between these two vehicles. Which one would you choose right now? Bear in mind, this will change because there are pros and cons to how they both drive. Let's boogie. Driving these two SUVs over the last week has been an edifying experience in many ways, but chiefly because these two vehicles show how far Chinese EVs have come, how much they've evolved. They both ride and handle reasonably well, especially compared to Chinese chariots of the recent past. But starting with the BYD, it feels right at home in the city limits. While it's not the performance variant of the lineup, the Sealion 7 Premium still offers responsive power delivery suitable for daily driving. Acceleration is smooth from its rear-wheel drive layout, and there's enough torque or thrust from the single E-motor to mask the vehicle's considerable 2.2-tonne weight. In EV terms, it's not going to blow your socks off, but that's not the aim here. It's consistent and competent. Although I have noticed there's a funny thing when you take your foot off the throttle, it sort of hangs for a couple of seconds before it starts to slow down. The other dynamic elements we need to talk about, steering and handling, are well suited to urban duties. The direct steering is heavier than the Xpengs, but it's still very easy to live with around town. As a family hauler or a daily commuter, the BYD ticks a lot of boxes, and if you're coming from a petrol-powered SUV, it's a very easy transition to make. The biggest difference is just the way it motivates. It's smoother, quieter, and a bit more instantaneous. On smooth country roads, the BYD feels composed, and it shows that Chinese brands are trying to improve the way their cars drive, especially for mature markets. Its wider track and lower centre of gravity work in its favour, allowing it to resist body roll despite its substantial weight. There are two steering settings, and Comfort Mode provides the more natural feel. Sport simply adds unnecessary synthetic weight without improving feedback. But the rear-wheel drive layout gives it moderately engaging dynamics, and those Pirelli P0 tyres deliver lots of grip. When it comes to ride comfort, the BYD is a mixed bag. It deals with big hits like speed bumps fairly well and handles everyday commuting adequately. But it falters over larger undulations at higher speeds. It just takes a little bit longer to settle than the Xpeng, and when that vertical movement becomes pronounced, even the stability control sometimes kicks in. That's a bit of a worry. While never harshly uncomfortable, ride comfort suffers when meeting sharp consecutive road imperfections, where the vehicle tends to skip over them rather than absorbing the impact smoothly, like in the Xpeng. Refinement levels in the Sealion 7 are generally good, although coarse road surfaces do transmit some tyre noise into the cabin. The slightly elevated seating position gives you a great view out the front window, and the reasonably slim A-pillars minimise your forward blind spots as well. As for the rear view, it's pretty typical for a swoopy coupe SUV, and to put it nicely, suboptimal. It's like a tiny little letterbox. You can't really see much below a certain level. It's almost a bit too raised. That said, the 360-degree camera system compensates when parking or manoeuvring in tight spaces. Sliding into the G6, and the first thing you notice is the driving position. It is, well, it's just better. That's because the seat goes a little lower, and this will benefit taller drivers for sure. The other thing is the oblong steering wheel. Now, I know it's not going to be to everyone's taste, but I really like it. For me, I think it works really well in the suburbs and even when you're out on the road, because it's almost like you've got these two side handles and you just yank them and turn, for me, it's almost like there's a bit more control there. Power delivery feels equally smooth compared to the BYD, but the G6's 200 kilogram lower weight translates to slightly better response from standstill. And I gotta say, overall, the Xpeng powertrain feels more adjustable to different driving styles. It just feels a bit more user-friendly. The G6 also outperforms the Sealion 7 in terms of ride comfort, particularly in urban environments. This is interesting given it's got 20-inch wheels versus the BYD's smaller 19s. Generally, the smaller the wheel, the better the ride comfort. But is the Xpeng faster in a straight line? Well, on paper, that's the claim. It's about 1/10 faster. And it does have launch control, this one. I'm not sure why, but it does. So let's give it a go. Hit this button, hit launch. Ooh. Yep, let's go. All right, that's moderate. It gets up to 100 pretty quick. Not too bad. So is it quicker than the BYD? Testing says yes, just. Where the BYD excels on smooth surfaces with its flatter cornering attitude, the Xpeng takes a very different approach. The G6's taller cabin profile raises its centre of gravity, resulting in more noticeable body roll through corners compared to the Sealion 7. However, the Xpeng strikes back with better overall compliance and predictability across many different surfaces. The G6's Michelin Pilot Sport EV tyres provide comparable grip to the BYD's Pirellis, and while the Xpeng exhibits more mid-corner bobbles when encountering bumps, generally it feels more composed and reassuring. The steering, while equally as numb as the BYD's, delivers a more consistent feel without unnecessary mode switching complexity. The G6 has passive dampers like its Chinese rival, and although the BYD has more sophisticated frequency selective dampers, or FSD, the Xpeng handles repeated small bumps with greater composure. The G6 is also a little bit more relaxing to drive than the BYD. It's got slightly better cabin refinement with less tyre noise and less wind noise as well. Where the BYD occasionally feels like it's trying too hard to deliver a sporty character, the Xpeng embraces its comfort-oriented mission with greater confidence, resulting in a more refined overall package. But I can see many buyers preferring the traditional layout of the BYD cabin. This will be a little bit too radical for some, whereas the BYD has that more conventional steering wheel and it's got more physical buttons and controls. Sight lines aren't quite as clear in this SUV due to the Xpeng's thicker A-pillars up front. Unless you pull out the rear seat headrests, you ain't going to see much. It does benefit from blind spot cameras, however. In fact, this vehicle has 12 cameras all told. And the Xpeng's emphasis on weight reduction pays dividends in terms of energy consumption. Its 2,025 kilogram mass giving it an advantage over the 2,225 kilogram BYD in real-world testing. On paper, the BYD claims to be more economical, but our data proves that this G6 is consistently more energy efficient. The G6's more aerodynamic profile helps in this respect, and while both vehicles offer effective energy recuperation systems, the Xpeng's true one-pedal driving capability makes it easier to maximise regenerative braking in stop-start traffic, potentially increasing range in urban environments. Both SUVs come with fairly good autonomous driving assistance, so they can go, stop and turn by themselves in certain conditions. However, the BYD's lane keep assistant it's more assertive, it's more forceful, whereas the G6 is it's more finessed, and I prefer living with this one more, for sure. The G6 is also one of the first Chinese SUVs I've driven in recent memory that doesn't constantly annoy you with the chiming and the noises and the beeping and the bleeping.
Blinking and beeping.
The good thing about this is that once you've set up all the systems and you can turn off all the audio beeps and bleeps, it remembers your settings when you turn the car off. So you come back into the car and away you go. Pretty much every other modern Chinese SUV I've driven resets every time, which is quite annoying. And the BYD is also one example of where it does it. So this one gets bonus points for that. These two Chinese EVs offer surprisingly well-rounded driving experiences. The Sealion 7 presents a slightly more dynamic character in the right conditions, while the G6 delivers superior everyday usability with its more compliant ride, better driving position, and genuine one-pedal driving capability. But both urban assault vehicles have enough ride height to bash over curbs and blast through steep driveways without copping any body hits. This also makes entry and exit into the cabin a bit easier. Ultimately, these EVs demonstrate how far Chinese manufacturers have come in recent years. They are no longer blindly following legacy car makers, which is really good to see. And in this EV price bracket, one could argue they're at the front of the pack. Obviously, they have their flaws, but they also show a level of maturity and originality their predecessors have lacked. And I reckon these SUVs really do represent a coming of age, where the Japanese and then the Koreans evolved and progressed over the decades. So now are the Chinese. Don't believe me? I was at the 2025 Shanghai Auto Show, which illuminated China's desire to set the agenda in the rapidly evolving EV automotive industry, and not just mimic what's already been done. But in terms of this comparison, I'm getting strong Natalie Imbruglia vibes. I'm torn. Both cars are worth taking for a test drive if you're on the hunt for an electric family SUV, and neither of these vehicles are going to disappoint. But it does feel like the G6 is like a modern or a new generation. In some ways, the BYD feels almost like it's a last generation EV. That said, the BYD is a more established brand in Australia and globally. So if you're concerned about an unknown manufacturer like Xpeng, then the BYD is probably a better fit for you. But ultimately, there can only be one winner, and the Xpeng sneaks ahead just despite being an emerging brand. This was an agonizingly close battle, and it could have gone either way, but the Xpeng takes the cake because it has that faster recharging battery. It's more energy efficient, it's got a bigger boot, and it's got that ultra modern interior. It's not going to be an emotional purchase. I still think this looks ugly, but in my view, it is the better buy. Thanks for watching, hope you liked the video, and which one would you take home? Thanks for watching, hope you liked the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment. Which would you take home? Build your dreams or Xpeng?